pull the particles out of the water and combine them together, and then they'll fall out in the clarifier, and that's what we're going to see next. So the raw water, and it's not running right now, but and I think they're actually backwashing the filters, so you may not see the operation, but you'll see how it works. Raw water comes in and it separates out of these two lines and go. Y'all afraid of heights?
Really?
Okay. Then it goes into these clarifiers, and we've got to go up to the top. Now, you see that red tint coming out of the water?
Yes.
That's because the water is actually running in reverse. We're coming through the filter, pushing all the stuff that's captured out, and then it goes out to the pump.
Okay.
The bad stuff, the sludge. Okay? You've seen water. Well, let me explain how it works. Water leaves the lake. We add alum to it, that's the coagulant, and it goes into these two tall clarifiers. It actually goes in the bottom. And it's upflow clarifier, so that water has that alum in it, and it's mixed, and mechanically and chemically, all of the particles in the water are clumping together. So as the water's rising, those particles are getting bigger and heavier, and they're falling down. So what's left is basically clear water. And there's a weir up there, and as that water comes through, it goes over that weir. Okay, so that's the first treatment process, the first step of the process. And then after it goes over that weir, it comes down through that pipe and goes into this filter, and it's called a multi-media filter because it starts at the bottom with rocks, and then the rocks get smaller and smaller, and then there's a coarse grain of sand, and then a fine grain of sand, and then a layer of about 18 inches of anthracite, which is a coal that, kind of like, have you ever had a fish aquarium? It takes all of those nasty constituents out of the water, the very final filtration process. At that point, we inject chlorine, and if we need it, we add caustic soda, which raises the pH because chlorine lowers pH, and the caustic is added to raise the pH, and then we add ammonium sulfate, which makes our disinfectant chloramine, and the chloramine is a very stable disinfectant. Will stay in the line a long way. So now the finished water leaves this building. And goes down into those two storage tanks, and they're each 500,000 gallons, and it sits there until the pump to town, and it's basically telephone lines. So in town there's a tank exactly the same size, and when that tank gets to a certain level, a signal is sent back to the plant that says, okay, turn the pump to town on. And the pump to town will come on, it'll take water out of these tanks and send it to town until the tank fills up. But it's finished water once it gets into those tanks. And then GM, actually that's their little building down there and their little generator. They take water out of the exact same tanks and distribute it out 3121 to Mid-Lake and out to 83 to Lowe's Creek. But then that water leaves and goes all the way basically to Geneva.
Any measurement of how much? Like how much is divided between them? Yeah,
I can tell you exact numbers at the office, but it's roughly leaving the plant roughly half and half. But we, the water that comes to town, you know, we sell it in town, and then we also sell to other GM take points, like on 87 South. There's a meter, and they take water from us there. And out 184, they take water from us there. And so there's 2 or 3 places that they actually take water from in town. So roughly the split on finished water is about 3/4 of the water goes to GM and about 1/4 goes to the city. But we'll go down the hill next. Basically, let me talk about these ponds for a second. These ponds are when all those particles fall out, Megan, in the clarifier, you know, we're talking about that sludge goes to the bottom of these clarifiers, and there's weirs, or V-shaped troughs actually in the bottom of these, and that sludge collects in there. So once a day or so, you have to, and this is the process we're in now, you have to blow the sludge off, and that goes into the pond, and you saw the water running now. And then all of that sludge and stuff that comes out of the water collects in these ponds, and once a year we have to have the ponds cleaned out and that sludge hauled off. And actually what we do with it, we land apply it. We give it to a farmer or somebody with a hay meadow, and that has to all be permitted, but then it's spread out because it's a very good fertilizer, and we just give it away and let
heavy nutrients.
Yeah, we let them put it on their hay meadows. So once a year that process is done to clean those ponds out. Could turn this plant back on in an emergency, but it's very difficult to meet the new regulations with 1970 technology.
Of course. And when did we get the new technology?
80s, in the mid-80s, I don't know the exact date. That's when the new clarifiers were built. And so now, you know, it's really time for us to take the next step on the clarifier. It's actually...
And so, will y'all have to tear those two towers down, or what will happen?
Well, our plan originally was to demolish them, take them out of service and demolish them. But our plan was also to build two smaller clarifiers, the new technology clarifiers. But the cost was prohibitive. It was going to be over $1 million, and we only had $500,000 budgeted. So we came up with a plan to, instead of two small clarifiers, build one large clarifier that's capable of the capacity. And instead of $500,000, it came in at $658,000. And we're actually splitting the cost of the installation of that clarifier with GM. But because we built the one instead of two with redundancy, we've decided and asked TCQ to allow us to keep those two clarifiers in operation. Not in operation, but operable.
Okay.
So we're going to disconnect them, but leave them in place.
In case something happens.
If something happened to the one individual. Because in water, you really need redundancy, because you never know what might happen.